The March 21st special meeting of the Tiverton Town Council to order. And if we could all stand to pledge allegiance.
Pledge allegiance
to the flag
of
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Feedback wasn't too bad that time.
Now, Joan, if you could do the roll call.
Councilor Burk,
Present.
Councilor Vieira,
Here.
Councilor Janick,
Here.
Councilor Cook,
Here,
Councilor Edwards.
Here.
Councilors DeMedeiros and Perry are absent.
Okay, thank you. So we're going to move to Director Rogers. I'll let Rick in.
So this is up on YouTube Live right now. Is Andrew here? Do you know?
He's here.
Good.
Yeah,
Recording
now-
in progress.
I
Now
just
we
started
are.
recording too.
Okay.
Sorry. I forgot it. I forgot I had to do that.
It's all right.
Okay, so Chris or Rick, who wants to? lead
I'll
us
let
off?
Rick go. Rick, can you hear us?
Yes, I can. Good evening, everybody. And thank you for considering this. We would like, DPW would like to advertise for another part-time mechanic. The part-time mechanic who is doing a nice job tendered his resignation recently. So we did supply with the backup for the town council's agenda request, a part-time ad, our request, and the part-time position description.
Anybody have any questions for Chris or Rick?
I do.
Donna?
Was there any particular reason why they didn't stay?
The
He's got another full-time job and it was burning him out. Is basically what the gist of the matter is.
Yes,
Oh.
and he did have another part-time job that was not a part-time job, but what they call a piecework job. And he was able to work that from, maybe 11 o'clock to 6 or 7. But that wasn't paying enough. That was his full-time job. So we went to another full-time job, but that was an hourly, but so he might get home at 8, 9, 10, 11 o'clock at night. It was getting to be too much.
Well, that doesn't seem workable in the beginning, so it's not. So,
Well, no, as mentioned, Donna, when he started with us, he was working a job where he might work till 6 o'clock at night, which was doable, but it didn't have enough piecemeal work. So we went to the other job while he was here, which is his full-time job. So when he started here, it wasn't bad, but he wasn't making enough money. So we went to the other job and that required him to, well, at least he ended up staying till too late at night. So he had to give up he wanted to give up the DPW job.
I see. Thank you. So every time somebody leaves, we have to do this again? Oh, seems kind of redundant. I mean,
Does.
It's the rules.
Any other questions for Rick or Chris?
No.
no. Well, can I make a motion?
Sure can.
All right, I'll make a motion to approve to advertise for part-time mechanic.
I have a second.
Second.
Was that Jay?
Yes. Sorry.
Okay.
Speak up.
Motion made by Donna, seconded by Jay to approve the request to advertise for a part-time mechanic for DPW. Any discussion further? Seeing none. Jay?
Yes.
Bill?
Yes.
Deb?
Yes.
Donna?
Yes.
And myself, a yes, unanimous.
Thank you.
Okay. Moving on to Administrator Cotta, discussion and possible vote to add the high school locker room project to the RIDE Stage 2 plan for an additional $1.3 million.
So based on the last council meeting last Monday, there was, the topic we had Mario Carino come in and kind of give a presentation about the council's responsibilities as it relates to the capital planning for education. He had suggested in the council, while it was not on the agenda to vote, basically did a consent of at least trying to move the project forward. But the condition was that we would bring this back to a town council meeting where it was on the agenda to actually vote to add the locker room projects for the high school to these capital planning. Even though there is really no money set aside for this, there would be the potential to utilize the reimbursement. And because of the monies that the council has already allocated for to do the bathrooms and the lighting projects for both the high school and the middle school, that the requirement of meeting half the capital plan has already been met. So there is no real requirement to do this, but if there is funds available, it would be ideal to put that on as the next step project during this process. So it kind of gives the town some latitude to do some projects without having to go back through RIDE all over again. So I did speak to RIDE the following day. They are in the process of amending the documents to ensure that this project can be included. They will utilize the minutes of the last meeting. And obviously this meeting, there'll be a formalized vote to agree to add that to the capital project for the education department.
And we're not committing or allocating any funds by doing this right now.
No, not at all.
That was a great meeting, and it gave me a much better understanding of how we're supposed to proceed and what our role is. And I was really thankful that he came to talk with us because it really opened my eyes.
Any discussion?
I guess I just have one question. So it's 1.3 million. We're going to get reimbursed back about 815,000 or?
It's an estimate, but that would be correct on the, I think it was what he was calculating was a 40 or 45% reimbursement on there's a $500,000 already approved emergency funding that was done, project that was already done for the middle school bathrooms. The town council authorized another $1 million change for the high school bathrooms. And there was 260,000 LED lighting. So as it goes through the process, it depends on what categories they can actually get for reimbursement, because there is some additional 5% for health and safety and things like that. So there was no exact number, but of the 1.67 million that the town has already allocated, there'd be a reimbursement between, say, $800,000 and $850,000 is my estimate of what. And that could be leveraged to be reused and reused. But that's not what we're asking here tonight. All we're asking is to adopt the consent of what the council discussed last week of approving adding the 1.3 million for the high school locker rooms to the capital plan. And then we'll figure out the funding of whatever, if we're going to do anything later.
So
Mario is also going to, if I remember right, he said something about there was a community like Lincoln or another community that was going to, there's a special way that they can take that reimbursement and secure it so it can get re-leveraged, that it doesn't come back into the town and wind up in the general fund. So that it keeps doing capital projects and you get reimbursed on that as well. So it keeps, you're leveraging that money. And there was I want to say there was some either agreement or a memorandum of something that he was drafting on behalf of that community, and he was going to share that with us, and the council could then decide if they wanted to adopt that process. But we were not committing to it until such time that we saw something. Right now, all we're doing is adding the project.
Okay, thanks.
Because,
Wait, Bill's not done. Bill's not done, I don't think.
I'm
Bill?
sorry.
Okay, so the balance from 1.3 million minus the 800 is about 400,000. So we're going to discuss the 400,000 at a later date.
At a later date, if you're inclined to do the project.
Okay, thank you.
Deb?
I'm sorry, Bill.
All right.
What I just wanted to say was if we did not include this and they ended up doing the locker rooms, we would not be eligible for reimbursement.
Right.
So it's really, there's no obligation to do this project. But if we don't say it up front, we're not eligible for any kind of reimbursement. So it's kind of a, you know, it's no fault to us.
What, may I say something, Mike?
Donna, go ahead.
I have a lot of difficulty with what we're going with the budget right now. It's so over the top. We don't know where this money's going to come from. Is there any way that this can be, you know, put off until we can figure out where the money's coming from?
So Donna, let me just try to be clear with this. So this is part of the stage 2 application that is already into RIDE. They don't have to do this, but they've opened up that stage 2 application for this to be added. The add is of no obligation to us. We've already met their 50% criteria, meaning we've gone forward with 50% of the fund of the project funding, so that we will already get whatever reimbursement is there available for what has already been put out, we'll get. This simply says that RIDE sees this on the approved list. That means that at some point in time in the future, while this stage 2 is still open, which I think is 2 more years, Chris? 3
Correct.
more years? Yeah.
I think a couple more years, yep.
If we decide to put funding towards it, it means that it's ready to go. It's what I would call shovel ready, so to speak. I mean, the shovel's not in the ground, but all the approvals are done. We find the money, we allocate the money, and it can go. We could also decide, you know what, it's not gonna be something we want to do for whatever reason, or we don't have the money to allocate, and it doesn't go, and it's no harm, no foul to us.
Okay, thank you, Mike. My problem has always been that the public has not had any say. They haven't voted and it hasn't been on a ballot, so it's a no-go for me.
Okay, but again, we're not allocating any money. We're not allocating $1.3 million.
Well,
We're simply saying to RIDE that there's projects there, because it could be spec'd out in small projects. I mean, it could be, you know, 1 bathroom at a time. There's no set way of doing it.
Oh,
Go ahead.
Mike?
oh, okay.
I just wanted to, so the council has the comfort that this is not an appropriation. We're not making any appropriations. We're just adding this as a potential appropriation in the future to a RIDE approved list that's already been done. To the extent that there is an appropriation at a later date, this ensures that you're going to get the reimbursement that RIDE talked about. That's all. But if it's not on this list in the stage 2, you'll never get reimbursement. So since the design and everything has been completed, RIDE recommended, and I think the council kind of consented, that this should be added to the list to preserve your right to get the reimbursement in the future, should you decide to make that appropriation.
I understand that, but the public has never been involved in any of it. And also the money that was approved and spent was not approved by the public. It was just done by casino money and the council. The public was never involved, and it's a no-go for me.
So Donna, I'm just going to say that all of our meetings have been very public, very transparent. So the public has always been able to be involved, and some members of the public have provided feedback. Some haven't.
I'm saying by ballot, I'm
to-
sorry.
I'm going to move to asking the administrator, would this be an appropriate motion that the council approves notifying the Rhode Island Department of Education and the Tiverton Public Schools and School Committee that we would approve adding $1.3 million of high school locker room improvements to the current stage 2 capital plan.
I would agree that that would be an appropriate motion. And it would confirm what the council discussed and consented to somewhat last week.
So did you make that as a motion, Mike?
Well, I'm gonna have Jay, you make it as a motion.
I'll
But I
make
would
it as a
add,
motion.
I would add just a note that we are not making any appropriations or allocating any funds at this time.
That's the motion.
Okay, do I have a second? Jay made the motion.
I'll second.
Deb, any further discussion? Okay, Jay,
Yes.
Bill,
Yes,
Deb,
Yes,
Donna,
No,
myself, a yes. It passes 4-1. Okay. Moving on. Chris, do you want me to bring the chief in right now?
When we get to some of the IT stuff
Okay,
and broadband, because that's basically in the radios,
okay,
he'd be the best person to bring in. But
okay.
let me give you a general overview.
Yeah, hang on, just one. So folks, what I'd like to do is have Chris give us the overview that he's going to do. And then we'll, take other questions, other suggestions. There are some ideas that have been shared with us by email today that I think Chris is going to touch on anyway with the Recreation Committee. I know Renee Jones is in the audience to talk a little bit about EDC thoughts. And there are some things we probably want to move forward on tonight, but we don't have to address all of these tonight.
Okay. So in general, so I can be specific about something, the memo, the first paragraph where it relates to the NEU and the county monies. If you go to the spreadsheet and you go to the very end of the spreadsheet, you'll see received and scheduled to received. When I started this memo, it was based on the September memo that we were anticipating getting monies. So what has actually happened, because I confirmed with the treasurer, in July of 2021, we received the NEU monies, which is, it's a standalone governmental entity of $819,660,000. Also in July of 2021, we received some county funding at $1,521,080. Those are actual receipts. So the numbers that are in that first paragraph are based on things that we thought we were going to get. They don't really correlate. They're not exact as to what's received and what we will receive. We are told now that we will receive in July of 2022 a like amount for the NEU monies and for the county monies. All told, Tiverton is expected to receive $4,681,480. Okay, so it's a little bit different in numbers than what we were playing with earlier. So when we met, I don't know, I want to say it goes back to January sometime, we talked about some other different funding, whether it was CARES money or gaming monies. And we also talked about some of this APRA money that, and I was asked to put together, and I think this is the very same list, but I was asked to kind of prioritize where I thought, and these are requests that I'm putting in on behalf of some department heads that, they're critical issues that we see that the town is facing to move forward, to put us in a better operational standpoint. And we'll discuss each of them as we go through. And so I did try to prioritize them, whether they were a high priority, medium priority, or low priority. I would say for tonight's purpose, there may be some items. I'm not looking to spend money tonight. I'm looking for maybe approvals to go out and seek bids for certain things so that we can come back to the council and say, these were conceptual ideas. This is what we went out. We've tried to get real hard and fast numbers. And we would look for at a future date to actually approve funding. But this is to kind of give a global picture as to what I see, at least needs in the community. And I know that there are others. And I'm expecting you as each council member would have your own ideas of where you think some priorities are that I may have missed altogether. And I'm sure there will be members of the public who have their views on where some of this money could be. So globally, when the American Recovery monies came out, say a year ago, a little better than a year ago, maybe, when the concept came out, the government was pretty strict in that there were going to be certain categories that had to be followed. whether it was sewer, broadband, dealing with clinics and vaccines and those kind of things, PPP and all that. And then there were some lost revenue categories. And when we originally calculated this, Denise Surratt did a phenomenal job of calculating our lost revenues for the last couple of years. They go back to FY 2020, 2021, right up through 2022. And there's a formulary that was, the government had showed us how to utilize. We'd come up with about $3 to $3.2 million in lost revenue. Well, we didn't complain, but a lot of other communities complained. And it wasn't just Rhode Island, it was all across the country. So the federal government, in their infinite wisdom, went back and looked at the rules and decided to change all the rules so that if you received an amount less than $10 million, 10 million or less, you could actually utilize it for any governmental purpose. So the categories kind of went away if you're receiving under $10 million. Now, originally I had set them out to try to find some sewer issues, some broadband issues. And that's why they were, and they are important issues. And when I get to these particular items, I can explain to you why they're important. So currently, and I provided the, not the compliance, the final rule that the federal government published in January 2022. And it demonstrates that issue of anything 10 million or less, you can utilize for any specific governmental purpose. And we did seek early on clarification as to whether or not OPEB would be a particular category, because there are some categories you're not allowed to do. Not allowed to pay for previous items that are encumbered and financed. You can't pay for unfunded pension liabilities. And I don't, there's one other major category, I'll get to it in a minute, I can't remember off the top of my head, but there are some restrictions, and it's in that guidance book. They tell you exactly what you can and can't do. So I went through and I looked at every category that we were already previously looking at. So OPEB obviously has been a contentious item. We've knocked it out of the FY21 budget, the FY22 budget, and the FY23 budget. It is, I think it's extremely important that we make those payments, that we at least make, these are the town share of those payments. Whatever the bargaining units that have been required to pay OPEB have been making their payments. So this is the towns making their share of those contributions. So I think that while, and I say that they're all high priority, it doesn't mean you need to spend $300,000 today. I mean, we could make the 2 catch-up payments and we can defer $100,000 till FY23 and do it in FY23. We've got plenty of time according to the guidance as to how to spend this money. It has to be obligated by the end of FY24 and expended by FY26. But, obviously some of these we need to get done in a more timely fashion. So that's 300,000 of a priority that I think is very important that we take care of. And from discussions with the council, I believe that most council members think it's the same priority. The next particular item I bring into play is we own, and the town has been fortunate when the villages of Mount Hope Bay was constructed, that the tax incremental financing that went for that particular project actually funded the main trunk line from the villages to Fall River Treatment Sewage Plant. The town, in their infinite wisdom at the time, decided to extend that line from the, I believe it's the pump station just below Little Bear, that went all the way to the industrial park. That bond is now coming to an end. We own that infrastructure, but really we have we don't manage sewers. So the Tiverton wastewater district has I think the town gave them a very long-term lease on any of the infrastructure that was in existence at the time that was not under debt. So the main line from the industrial park all the way to Fall River is what they call the interceptor line. That line has never really been inspected, hasn't been maintained, and hasn't been cambered. And ideally, we need to put some maintenance into this. We need to find where all the manholes are. We need to clear some brush along the waterfront. We need to look to find if there are any erosion issues as it relates to storms that have happened over the years. We need to mitigate those, and we need to clear out the pipe. And at that point, I would think, once that's done, and we work with wastewater to monitor what we're doing so that they have a full understanding of what it is, that the town council may decide, and its authority, to grant that infrastructure over to Tiverton wastewater so that they can utilize it to generate revenues. Right now, the town of Tiverton has no way to generate a revenue out of this, unless we want to charge Tiverton wastewater to utilize it. And I'm not so sure we want to go down that road. That's a whole nother nightmare for us to have to deal with. We don't have the expertise or the personnel to deal with sewering. They have a charter that grants them the authority to do all the sewering in the north end of town. And ideally, that sewering line, that interceptor line that goes all the way along the water and up to the industrial park, should be maintained by the Tiverton wastewater district once we have cleaned it, marked it, identified it, and have come to an agreement with Tiverton wastewater. But there is some significant monies that need to be spent to get us to the point where that sewer line is clean, clear, and free of any kind of debris. So I've been working with Rick Rogers and the superintendent wastewater. They have an interest in bringing this on, but because they don't own the line, they're not willing to put the money up to maintain it until such time that it's cleared. And quite frankly, I agree with them that I wouldn't want to take on that line knowing that it's never really been maintained. So I do think that that's a pretty prudent investment. It did qualify into the original categories of sewer. And it would make sense that it'd be a priority to move this asset out of an operations where the town has to maintain this and put it into the wastewater district, who actually has the expertise and wherewithal to actually maintain it. We can bring the chief in now. I don't know if there's any questions, at least on the first two, the OPEB.
Any questions for those two items? So Chris, on the OPEB, it would probably make sense that you have a vote on the first two fiscal years tonight?
Okay.
No, it's a question.
No, it would. If I do believe that the council's thought.
Call from the Adrian Edward.
Sorry.
I'm putting, you got it?
I do believe the council's thought over the last couple of years has been that the OPEB funding that has been taken out of the budget would be paid for with the American Recovery monies. So it would make sense if they would, and I don't say you have to do it right now, but either, at some point I would entertain that the council would want to move forward and at least make up the FY 21 and 22 funding shortages and get those monies in the accounts where they belong.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else have questions on these two sets, the sewer and the OPEB?
I don't have a question. I'll just make a brief statement. And I think Deb Janick can back me up on this. During my time on budget, we perennially rated OPEB when we were short on funds. And it can't continue. And if we don't do it this way at this time, we probably will continue to not adequately fund it. And it will bite us in the end. This is going to be a relatively easy and painless way to deal with this.
Yeah, you're right, Jay.
Thank you. All right, the broadband.
So we can bring Chief Jones in now if you would
He-
like.
he-
He's
there.
here.
Oh, I'm sorry.
He's just not showing his face. There he is.
So I'll give you a little bit of, from at least my perspective, when a couple of things I saw when I first came into town. One of them is, some of the cars that we had were pretty bad, but the second one was definitely broadband or internet. I was somewhat shocked and taken aback by the way that we operate here. And, Cox is, a great provider for a residence, but to run an enterprise out of, it can be a little bit daunting at times. And the more that we move towards modernizing our departments, and the police department is a prime example, through no fault of their own, they are now confronted with a statewide records management system for all police entities recording, and all their metrics are all going to be on a statewide system. They will communicate with each and every city and town. They'll be able to do investigations jointly where they can't currently with today's systems. I was part of this conception years ago from the AG's office. And I worked with the state police and some of the major city police chiefs on developing this system so that all criminal aspects of law enforcement, from the street to the courtroom and actually to the Department of Corrections, would be modernized, electronic, would be all searchable, it would be all integrated, and all the metrics would be common throughout every city and town. Where currently today's technologies, 39 cities and towns have their own empire, and they don't at all talk to one another. And they don't at all work well with the court system, the Attorney General system, the Rhode Island Department of Transportation, as it relates to tracking tickets and everything. And they even went so far when they were developing this system to include all the fire metrics. So every fire department should be being brought into this as well at some point. So the robust nature of what they're going to need for a pipeline to move this data, to share this data, is not going to be satisfied with the current connections that we have today. When you add the fact that the state is going to be it actually is mandating, and I don't know who the first test cities are going to be, that body cameras are going to be worn by all police officers. That information also has to go through a very similar pipeline. It will not work on the current systems that we have, that we operate on today. More importantly, every system that we have in this town, none of it is set up to be, and I hate airing it this way, but none of it is in a mode that could be utilized for disaster recovery. If the police department, the treasurer's office, the clerk's office, the assessor's office, or any one individual office crashes, there is no replicated system of any of our systems anywhere. And in order to do that, what we did with the Attorney General's office is we put in a broadband system that was broad enough and robust enough that we could snapshot all of our data 4 times a day. And we could, I had this happen in one of our offices that went down, we could actually be up in 10 minutes somewhere else. We can't do that today. We would have to recreate all the existing data. It is a very laborious problem, and we have a lot of sensitive, personal, critical data that we should not be operating in the manner that we are. We have been a small city and town, and we have kicked this IT stuff down the road a long time. But in order to move this data across the internet platforms, you can't do it with a 30 or 25 megabit system. You have to have a robust enough system, well over 100 megabits, to move this data freely and appropriately without crashing and bogging down. So putting in broadband is a very critical step to do that. Ideally, we can do that for any of our municipal entities, but because the police department has a fairly decent IT closet, air conditioned, on generator, all the things that we would really need to do in any other IT aspect that we have, which we don't. None of our other servers are on backup. None of them are in a cooled environment, and none of them are replicated. So it's trying to bring our technology into the 21st century. We are a hair's breadth away from a lawsuit over either losing data, having corrupted data, or being hacked. Because I don't believe we have sufficient enough systems in our current environment to protect the community. I hate to air it this way, but it's just the nature of what we have, and every city and town is pretty much in the same boat we are. There are very few communities who have sunk the money into dealing with their IT infrastructure that need to be done. I'm not saying this is a wish list. This is a high priority. But the first and foremost piece that goes to this is getting a broadband connection to the police department's IT closet. And we've been working with Ocean, who did a majority of things around the state on behalf of the state, and they're a state master price agreement vendor. We can hire them because they're on the bid list, and they've done phenomenal work for all the universities, all the hospitals in the state, and all the libraries in the state. So it would be ideal to bring them in. We've had some general discussions with them. They have not given us formal quotes on things yet, but I don't know if the chief has any more he would like to add, but you know, his of all the departments we have in town, while the treasurer's has highly critical personal information and the clerk's does as well, and actually even our assessor's office with all the records managements that we have, the police department's criminal records are very, very vulnerable the way that we sit today. But
Chief,
I don't know if Chief, you have
Chris,
Donna, hang on, Chief.
yeah, I have to tell him something.
What do you have to
I
tell
may.
him?
It has to do with the Harbor Commission. They can't have their meeting because Chris has to do something to let them have their meeting with Zoom.
Thank you.
Oh, hang on. So I'll let the chief speak. I'll be here quietly.
Chief.
Good evening, everybody. So just to echo what the administrator said, everything that he said is pretty much the current state of the IT infrastructure for the town. And I want to kind of also reiterate that where we have the sensitive connections, we have the IT server, this would also benefit the town municipal wide. So the fire department's public safety records management system sits at the police department. So the 3 fire stations, for a firefighter to get in and do a rescue or a fire report, they log into a workstation at the fire department and it comes into the police department to allow them to get the records. So that's all when the dispatcher dispatches, whether it be a fire truck, a rescue, or a police officer, that system sits here at the police department. And I know with the administrator's idea to move all of the municipal town government infrastructure here is a brilliant idea because we got the IT server room, it's climate controlled, and we're open 24 hours. If something crashes at 2 a.m., you don't have to worry about an IT tech person trying to get into town hall. They just come here. And it just gives us access all the way. Also, I'll also add that everything that we're doing now, the body cameras is just kind of adding more to what we're already doing. Your police officers, when we arrest someone, we don't take ink fingerprints anymore. Everything is electronic on a machine that gets transmitted to the Attorney General's office. When a police officer stops a car and writes a ticket, if the laptop computer inside the police cruiser isn't working, everyone gets a free ride because that car can't be utilized because all the tickets are digital and everything gets transmitted electronically. So the days of ink fingerprints and an officer carrying a ticket pad are gone. And even during the day, when we have the command staff present and we have all the administrative staff present, given our current broadband connections, there are times that we have to go around to workstations and detectives and officers, even myself, and kick people off because we're using too much bandwidth and we can't enter the system. And that's just the police department. So this system and the broadband connection is an absolute necessity for us to move forward and just maintain what we're doing. Never mind the idea of bringing all the other infrastructure into the town.
Thank you, Chief. Anybody have questions for the chief on this? Chris had to jump off, I think, because he can't have this Zoom open and then try to help the Harbor Commission. He has to close this, open up his Zoom, hand it off to Bruce or whomever, and then come back into this.
I know. I'm sorry I had to interrupt, but
no,
there
that's
were
fine,
quite
Donna.
a
I apologize
line.
to you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I don't have a hand to put up here. I don't know what happened.
All right.
So,
well, I hear you. Go ahead.
All right. Could you just tell me what the cost would be going forward after we possibly approve this? What would it cost every year for this?
So it's going to be significantly expensive. So the initial startup costs and the estimates that we're getting is going to be just under $100,000, and that's initial costs. Will it be more expensive than what we're paying now for our internet connections? It will be. Counselor, I wish I could give you an estimate, but it could be. What I can tell you is when we were looking at it with Cox, it was, and this is just for us, approximately 3 times as much. So we're paying 3 times. So we're probably looking at an average bill for us is probably about $200. It would go up about $600 a month. And I would say that Ocean is probably in the same ballpark for it. So we would be looking at a significant increase to the daily, or excuse me, the monthly fees that we normally use. But I'd be guesstimating at this point, but yes, it'd be an increase.
So what would cost, I'm just looking at the operations budget going up. The initial, I'm not against this. I think we need it. I'm just looking at cost going forward. So $100,000 initially. And then what would you say yearly would be in your budget for this to keep it going?
For us, I would probably say approximately $6,000.
$6,000 for the year?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Donna. Jay?
Okay, so we're probably all well aware that IT is not cheap, and the monthly or annual fees that we're going to have to pay will go up, and they're going to keep going up.
Yep.
Just keep in mind, we're a $52 million corporation, and we handle a lot of sensitive information that has to be protected and kept from prying eyes, and it needs to be secure at all times. So it's going to be the cost of doing business, and it's a business that we have to cover.
Yeah, and I do appreciate, Donna, you raising that question, because that's an important question. And I do hear you saying too that you understand and believe that we need to do this, but we always should be thinking about what the outer costs are.
Can I ask Chris one question? Quick. Chris, you got town hall broadband as a medium?
So
I see it as a high myself.
Until we hear from Ocean as to what it's going to be, because the town hall doesn't have, while we have critical information, and I'm not disputing that, we don't have the video components to be moved other than our town council meetings, and that we do to get out on the internet, which are nowhere near as robust as what they're going to be doing with body cameras.
Mhm.
So I do think if the police department is at least done that way, and we could put in a more robust connection between every department that needs to point at the police department. If all the infrastructure was at the police department, we'd be better suited. I do think the current Cox connection, although it would have to be, I think, a more robust, even if it's half of what we can get through Ocean. Ideally, we could probably get away with that in a while, for at least a little while, until obviously technology changes. So they haven't given me a price on what it would be to do the town hall yet. That's why it's a medium priority. The highest priority is to get it to the police department, and we can point to the police department from our assessor, from our clerk's office, from the treasurer's office, and we can do it securely with some different firewall systems that we don't have today, and do it on a lower bandwidth than what the police department would have. Yeah, it's coming out of his closet, going out into the World Wide Web, whether it's, if you're gonna do disaster recovery somewhere up in Andover, Mass, or down in Connecticut, having that ability to get across that bandwidth to move that data that he has is far different than what we would be needing in the town hall. But I do have as a priority, but a lower one, until Ocean can tell us what it would be to do the town hall.
Okay.
So
It
Chris,
might be a more robust Cox connection for broadband, but I don't think Cox right now doesn't provide the broadband criteria that is required in what was in the original categories for broadband in Tiverton. I do know that there's a conceptual issue of they're going to put some monies into Newport, Middletown, and Portsmouth, but right now Tiverton, Little Compton have been a little bit left out of that equation. But ideally, all of this side of the bay needs to be done at some point as well.
Chris, would it make sense if we look at going forward with the police that we get?
It would.
An estimate from Ocean for both?
It would. And then we can come back and sit down and have a discussion with the council as to, this is what we, found out. This is what the annual, the monthly fees would be to run forward with what we would do. But this is what it's going to cost to at least connect with a robust system.
Deb?
So 2 questions. I know the governor talked about the body cams, and I understand that we're not eligible. We weren't in the list anyway, but we're not eligible because we needed to upgrade, and this would help us do that, right?
Correct. So we're not, it's not that we're not eligible. We are eligible. We don't believe it'll work with the system that we have today, but it is going to be mandatory for all communities to have to do this. So it's not an option.
Within this year, or I thought there was.
I don't know when the time for the chief could speak more of the timeframes, but it is going to be mandatory for all 39 cities and towns to do this.
I would
Okay,
say, I would
they
say
released it
2022,
20,
this year.
they released the list of probably the initial towns that were being put on. So I understand the importance for the police, and I understand the importance for town hall, but where does that leave our fire and DPW?
So currently, right now, fire, their system actually runs out of the police department today. They point towards the firehouses, but they don't have servers at those firehouses. All the servers are actually in the police department. And all the metrics that they're capturing are all done in the server closet at the police department. So they're running kind of a system that I'm talking about today.
Yep.
That they're pointing back and forth from the fire departments to the police station. And ideally, setting up the assessor, treasurer, and the clerk's office to do the same is the goal here.
Okay, so that'll just grade them
It's actually
too.
VPN. So it's like a remote desktop.
Right.
That's what the fire department does now.
Oh, okay. That's something I understand.
Other questions on the broadband item? Okay. We're gonna move on. Chris, do you want to take the
Okay.
next group together?
So the next group is a part and parcel of what I was just talking about. It's the treasurer's office server is running at a snail's pace. The clerk's, server is in the vault that has not been upgraded. I don't know how many years that's been in there. That it's a lot of the technology that we have is just totally antiquated. The servers that are over in the assessor's office, they're all 10 to 12-year-old. They all need to be replaced. They're outlived their serviceable life. I can't even get, they're not even on service contracts. So they're end of life. They've well outlived their useful lifetime, and we need to get them so they're modern, that they're replicated, and that there are proper firewalls protecting the data in between them. Currently, I don't think that we have. I don't want to mention it publicly what we have. I'm not at all satisfied that it is a robust enough system to protect the data that we have. So, and within that, there is also that, we've talked a number of times about the way that we conduct our meetings. It would be ideal if the town chambers where the council meets, that it was modernized so that we could have hybrid meetings there for the town council, the planning board, the zoning board, and any other board or commission that wanted to use it on a night that wasn't taken. Like the Harbor Commission, if they wanted to change to an alternate night. Just getting the information out onto YouTube videos could be modernized, but I don't know where we're going to be with all this, COVID stuff, and when the next round's going to be around, where we're back to doing remote stuff again. Ideally, having robust enough equipment to do a hybrid meeting that you don't have 10 laptops sitting out there, they're all bleeding over on one another, and nobody can see half the meeting and the other, setting it up so that it could be viewed by people around the community, how we conduct our government transparently, and then be able to have access to the council and those boards and commissions from their homes to communicate with them would be ideal. It's not going to be cheap. It's, I've known some of the cities and towns around the state have spent upwards of $50,000 to $70,000 to do this. I don't think it's going to cost that much to do what we need to do. But again, it's bringing the technology into that room so that it's available so that we can provide a transparent government to our constituents. And, So we still have some of our offices are antiquated. They're not on Office 365. They're not running, modern technology. It's trying to get rid of some of the old legacy systems that are no longer supported, and trying to get everybody into a system that is modern and current.
And that would include updating any operating systems that we would need to update
Correct.
to be able to meet.
So just changing the servers that we have for the treasurer, assessor, and clerk would modernize all those to be modern, updated servers. They'd be all state-of-the-art current systems.
Yeah, I don't mean the servers. I mean the operating systems in the computer. So Microsoft, I forget the business operational one, but like I have Microsoft 11,
Right.
and 10 is gone, 7 is way gone.
So we would
Windows.
work and look to see what we have. It's what is, I don't know. I haven't done an inventory of every desktop to see what we're currently running. I do know that we've replaced a number of different desktops and laptops. I still operate just off a laptop. I don't even have a desktop, but it's more modern and it's current versus using an old antiquated desktop that may not be supported by the current systems. So we would have to do somewhat of a study internally as to how many different desktops we have, which ones conflict and which ones don't, and which ones actually need to be replaced.
And I would hope that that study would include which operating system that we use.
It would.
and whether or not it should be upgraded.
No, you're absolutely correct.
Anybody have any questions on this grouping of items?
Well, no, but I think it's important to remember that even once we get up to speed, we're still at the mercy of whoever creates these operating systems and computers. And when they change every 4, 5, 6 years, we're going to have to follow suit. And it's just, it's a method of doing business that is not, it's expensive, but you can't play catch up all the time. You need to be caught up all the time.
So our last failure that we had here in Town Hall, it actually wasn't a server. It was the switches, believe it or not. They just fried. So no computer could speak to any server. We couldn't figure it out. It took us a while to figure it out. And thankfully, Dave, Robert, and Dave Vinaglia, one of our contractors, came in over the weekend and spent a pretty good part of the weekend here fixing those switches. But they're just antiquated. They were probably bought in 2005. They're just so antiquated that. And we need to modernize, and it should be in our budget annually. We should have an IT operating budget for running this community, and we don't have one. I'm not asking for staff. I'm just for dealing with the things that go off that are no longer supportable. We're just waiting for a crisis to happen, and that Monday that when we came in, I think we were down at least half that Monday before we got most of the town hall back up and running again. So it's critical to keep our infrastructure up and running so that we can work. Last thing we want to do is send staff home simply because we don't have computers to work on.
Other comments, questions on these items?
No, I personally think we need all of that, but yeah, all set.
So
hang on, Chris, before we
Sure.
move on. I'm just going to put my 2 cents in on the town hall video remote meetings. I'd actually like to have us think about going a little bit beyond what I think you're describing. And I know there was some upgrades to it done, I don't know how long ago, but the whole audio system in town hall, and making, putting a few more speakers perhaps, thinking about the microphone setup and whether or not it could be done in a different way, I don't know, or add on maybe lapel mic, something like that. Again, I'm not the expert in this. I want somebody to assess it. The other thing I'm thinking of is that would be, at least from my perspective, although I tend to be much more involved with computers than some others, is having monitors at our desks. Now, in my agency, I forget what they're called, but they have basic, they're not real hard drives. They're very
they're terminals. They're
Yeah, and they're in what endpoint terminals or something like
Right.
that. And, so you can use that and anybody can log in who has credentials. So it could be used for other boards and commissions. I know we did at one point, I think we had laptops for members if they needed them. Maybe having ports to plug your laptop in,
Yeah.
so that, like right now I could just take a cable down, an HDMI cable, and if there was there was a screen there that took HDMI, I'd just plug into it and I'd have it there. I wouldn't be logged into a system, but I could look at all the documents that I'm looking at right now.
Okay.
And how, when we're thinking of remote meetings, what does that mean in terms of visuals that people want to look at? Because you're going to have to show them to people in the audience perhaps as much as you're going to show them to people online. So just thinking all that kind of stuff through.
So ideally, it would probably be a projector up in the ceiling pointing at a screen behind the council.
Well, there is one there now.
Yep.
The only challenge with that is the council has to move to look at it. But if you had the monitors right there, then you might be able to. I don't know how it's positioned, whether or not, for me, I'm short, so it's always above my head. But for somebody who's taller, it might not be. So those are just some ideas I had.
No, I agree.
I don't know, Mike. It looks like you're on top of a roof, so you're pretty high right now.
He's up with the pigeons.
No, you don't.
At least I'm not sleeping with the fishes.
Yeah.
Not tonight.
Oh, boy.
So, yeah, we'll definitely take a look at entirely modernizing that council chamber to deal with today's technology that, and I, quite frankly, I didn't put it in here and I probably should have, is you people have been very, very patient, but those chairs you sit on should probably all be replaced. It would be small money to kind of, make it a little bit more comfortable for anybody who utilizes that chamber.
About lazy boys, can we have oh, that's right, would fall asleep. Wait a minute.
Oh, no.
I don't know about a lazy boy, but those chairs are like sitting on boards.
Well, I'm sitting in a lazy boy right now, and these things are nice.
All right, moving on to, you want to take the fire police comm radio set?
Sure, we can bring the chief back in because he actually has far more information about this than I do. He's the one who's brought my attention that how we got the current system that we have, how old it is, and it's how we're operating today. We really need to modernize this. Again, I do know, because I've been in the meetings with Cybercom and the Rhode Island RISCOM people, that what we have currently is totally not supported. It breaks, we're done. It is a Chief, how long have we had this system? It's since 17, 18 years now?
2004.
Okay.
The inherited system that we were given.
It wasn't inherited, it was taken out of the dumpster.
Well, yeah. But,
North
you know,
Providence threw it away. North Providence threw it away. So we were able, by way of history, and the fire department is, so there are two systems that exist in town. An 800 megahertz system, which is the statewide RISCON system, which most law enforcement agencies, all cities and towns, from DEM to Capitol Police to State Police, everybody's on RISCON. Coast Guard, everybody. And then there are agencies or municipalities who still operate 400 megahertz systems. So the police department is exclusively on 800, and we have been since 2004. The fire department operates two systems. And I know Chief Reimels recently is moving towards 800, but we need to maintain the 400 because we do mutual aid into Massachusetts. Fall River and Westport are on a 400 system. So the chief's challenge is he needs to maintain two systems where we are okay just on one, on the 800. So, but collectively, that is more of a problem for our console that we need to have, which is where the dispatcher sits. So he or she can maintain multiple systems. Add to that, we have a casino security frequency that goes into that system. So the console kind of looks like it's almost like a switch panel, like an old, and I'm going to date myself, but I understand my audience, an old telephone operator would have, plugging in, picking up a phone and plugging in wires. It's obviously more modern that it's all touchscreen, But the one that we have currently in use was thrown away, or literally thrown away by the North
Yes,
Providence
correct.
Police Department in '04. The Rhode Island Emergency Management, they are pretty much the point liaison folks for the state. And they were able to take the system. They said, listen, there's really nothing wrong with it. They just upgraded their system to a better system, and they've upgraded it probably 4 or 5 times since. But you folks can use it. And knock on wood, we've used it. This is a Motorola system. That's the vendor of the type of system that we have. From the mobile radios inside every fire truck, every police car, every ambulance, to the portable radios that your police officers and firefighters carry on their persons. So all of that is Motorola, and it's all integrated into the system. And I know you're looking at this number. I would say probably almost half that number is just to replace the dispatch consoles that currently exist. Because we were told by Motorola last year, they reached end of life last year, meaning that once something happens, and all it is essentially a computer with software that exists on it. And to Vice President Burke's point, we're basically running Windows XP on our radio system, and we can't update it. We can't do anything with it. When it dies, it dies. So they are telling us you need to upgrade. So what we're planning on doing, or what the proposal to you is, and the majority of that is to upgrade your dispatch center. And I'll also add, and I know the administrator and I and the fire chief have had conversations about this. At some point, I know you've all walked through the station, you see where inside the police department where the dispatch center is. Not only do we have this antiquated equipment inside this room, but the room is antiquated as well. It's dark, the floor is literally breaking down because of the rolling of the dispatcher going back and forth. It's not climate controlled, there are no windows. So at some point, we need to invest. If we're going to put this equipment inside this room, we need to look at upgrading that room for the people that work in there 24/7, 365. And then the remainder of this money would be utilized to buy current upgradable mobile radios for both your police officers and firefighters. So, and I will also add, and I know the administrator was talking about this too, to kind of piggyback on the broadband. So inside our current server room is the hub for the 800 megahertz and radio system for the town. It sits also inside the police department because it's climate controlled, generator backup. What we would also propose with broadband, and we can connect a broadband connection to the radio system as a data line opposed to a voice line. And we could set that up, which would give us better coverage and a more secure line. And I know Chief Reimels isn't here tonight, but he would tell you, because he maintains the 400 megahertz system, he is paying Verizon $2,500 a month to maintain lines for his 400 system.
Correct.
So the plan would be to move that on with broadband and this new system. And within a very short period of time, we would recoup that money that we're currently losing just to maintain the fire department's radio system.
So Donna, there's your double cost on the broadband side, on the monthly cost. You recoup it over there. So Chief, what would you, if we went forward with this, where would you house the dispatch when you're upgrading the room? Or would you think of finding a different spot, rehabbing that, and then moving the dispatch into that new place?
Correct. So we would have to set up a temporary spot inside the police department, and we could do it. We would figure it out.
So I guess let me, are you thinking that this current room would be the permanent room after you rehabbed it? Or are you thinking that you have another space that you'd move it into, you'd rehab that space, move the new stuff in there, all the new equipment and everything, and then make a different use out of the current dispatch room?
So forgive me, I'm going to sound cheeky. If we had a new building complex to move to,
I know.
that was what I would want. I couldn't resist. But to answer your question, sir, what we would do is we take the dispatchers, move them out of the current space, and then rehab the current space, because we could actually go further to the wall and kind of make it so it's more, we could actually give them a window. We can actually make the space so they're not sitting side by side and working literally on top of one another. We could kind of just, carpet it, put proper lighting, put a mini split in there. So it's, it gets hot in there and it gets cold in there. We could actually make it a professional working environment, then add in the consoles. And then during all this time, we could put them in another section inside the police department to run the day-to-day the operations of dispatch.
So then you'd really be looking at 2, maybe 3 projects in terms of design of the project. So you'd be looking at a rehab of the facility, so to speak. That would include moving them into temporary space, doing everything you just described inside. And then the second piece would be purchasing the new consoles and everything and putting those in. And then the third bit, if you would, could be the radios themselves.
So the consoles is kind of a, when I say consoles, and it's kind of a term of art, the console is a computer that has a screen, a microphone, but the console isn't a literal console, but,
yeah.
And that's what Motorola calls it. But as part of that, to your point, sir, we would bring in like a better furniture, so to speak, or an actual workstation for the dispatcher to sit on. Like you see, if you Googled it right now, what you'd expect your police, fire, dispatch, communications person to have: multiple screens, switches, telephones, a little kind of a desk light. That's kind of where we need to be with our dispatch center for both police, fire, and rescue.
Okay.
Is it safe to say that you're probably going to have to enlarge the server closet and enhance the cooling system in there as a part of all this?
As you know, one of the 800 megahertz radio towers is over at DPW.
Right.
So that's one of them. What we'd want to do is the current radio server tower, if you will, sits inside the police department. We've been in discussions with both Ocean and Motorola to move that to the tower, because we have lines that go underneath the ground that DPW dug for us that go from the DPW tower into the police department. And I know the Chief Reimels, he did that so he could get rid of what he's paying $2,500 less because he did that, but he's still paying $2,500 because there are other radio sites in town. So because DPW was able to dig a trench for us and we were able to lay some lines down, he was able to take a couple of the lines that he needs for to maintain his radio system. So what we want to do is move the rate, get Ocean to move over there, maintain the lines that we have underground, but take the radio system and move it closer to the radio antenna.
So there's kind of
open up space in our server room.
So there's a house over there that is on a generator for the tower and some cooling control systems for that particular house.
Right.
That makes sense. It's already there. Why not use it?
Exactly.
And that will free up some room to do the other IT initiatives that we have with the police chief's closet.
Other questions for the chief or Chris on the radio comm system? So let's move to the COPS grant.
So we have, as we know, we have a $250,000 COPS grant, and we did have a pretty thorough discussion about what it's going to cost to do this. And obviously the lion's share of that is year 4. But there's a match for, we'd be looking at about $83,000 a year. Over 3 years comes at $250,000. The additional amounts of money that it would take to fund those 2 officers over the next 3 years beyond their entry level, and adding the 4th year in full is what equates to that $470,000. We did suggest, and it's approved, that that in the guidance that we can utilize these funds to match grants. We did check with the COPS grant office. They agree that we can match this grant, that they have no issue with that. It's not a prohibition from the COPS grant. So this is just putting out the total number. It would be obviously spread over those 3 to 4 years, and we would make that match with the American Recovery monies.
Anybody have any questions on that one, since we have spent a lot of time on it?
Well,
Okay,
other than to make the comment, it's a little unusual that we're going to be allowed to use federal money to do just this. Usually these grants say you can't.
So we did check with the congressional district on the grant that we get for the cops grant. And they had no issue with it. And the pandemic office has no issue with it either. It's common practice now with the American Recovery monies across the nation to match some particular grants. It's being utilized all across. In Rhode Island, I could probably name 10 or 15 of them that I know of that are being matched. And most of them are cops grants, but there are other burn jack kind of grants or other grants that are out there being matched. So it's, you know, it does complete the process of that cops grant to fulfill the desires and needs of what was applied for, and it provides a funding mechanism to ensure that we can move forward with it. Unless there's any other questions, I'll move on to the Newport County Mental Health, and it doesn't necessarily, I've used that as a term. My view here is that we are deploying a number of police officers to work in the community to deal with a number of our mental health issues, and we have a number of them. The police chief can address some of the things that they see day in and day out, and how they record those, and how they know the metrics of how many cases they see and what we would need to do moving forward. But the real issue is they're police officers, and while we can put some of them through different trainings to help mitigate some of the issues, there really needs to be a clinician to help work with the police department to get these people the services that they need. They're far better in tune with, once we identify these individuals and we are having interactions with them from the police department. It's not always a bad thing having an interaction with the police department. In some respects, it's actually a very good thing to get these people the services that they need. The trouble is our officers may not know or have the ability or the expertise on how to get them the right services. So it would be ideal to work with like a Newport County Mental Health or some agency like that. And I actually did speak with them this morning, and we had a short conversation, but ideally I'd like the police chief, some of his members, Newport County Mental Health, and myself to sit down and formulate a plan that would be a very cohesive action plan moving forward that would give a full-throated picture of what would take place and how we would help mitigate some of the mental health issues that we have in town. But I don't think it's just a police matter. I do think it's, we're gonna need more than police officers to help deal with this matter. Chief, I know that you've mentioned a number of cases to me, and I'm not asking you to talk specifics, but your staff see this on a very regular basis. And it's daunting for them at times to deal with this because there's really no resource that we're working with to get these people the help that they need. Are we identifying them? Are we handling a situation at a particular time and point in time? Yes, but it's probably not the most appropriate method of getting them the help they need. So I'll defer to you as to some of the conversations we've had.
Again, to echo what the administrator said, and it was recently, we had a staff meeting, command staff meeting recently. And I know one of the supervisors brought up that in a 16-hour period, aside from like the traffic stops, every single call that they had in a 16-hour period, it's probably 14, 15 calls, every single one of them were mental health related. They had two committals that they had to take someone to seek help. One was voluntary, one was involuntary, check the welfare. They had clinicians go out, drug overdoses. So, and he made it a point to bring it up during the meeting because it just kind of, another example of everything that we're dealing with our citizens. And we're there. We're the ones that they call. We also I was in conversations too, we're always talking to Newport County Mental Health, but also designating the police department as a safe station. So if someone wants to come in 24 hours a day and they just need help, we will get them the help that we need. There'll be clinicians on call 24 hours a day, and they've told us that they'll be here in 45 minutes, that they can come in. If they need to be checked out by rescue, they can be checked out. They will transport them, they will evaluate them, and they will get them help. So our role just isn't to go there and arrest people anymore. It's a total paradigm shift. We are going there and we're helping these people so we don't have to go back and do that enforcement role anymore. I will also add just one more piece too, and with this funding, and we're going to do this. I mean, this is obviously the will of the council. Your police department, fire department, we're going to keep doing the job that we're doing, no question about it. But also we want to look at the health and wellness of your public safety employees as well. Suicide has become we're dealing with a pandemic. There's a pandemic among your public safety employees when it comes to mental health and wellness. And it is a serious, serious issue. And it's kind of one that has been unspoken for a long time, but now it is coming to the forefront, given everything that's going on with public safety workers. We need to make sure that our investment in the police officers and firefighters that we employ, that we hire, that we maintain that investment. And that's making sure that it's mental wellness, health, fitness, and we're taking care of our people with everything that they're involved in. And I definitely want to see, and I know I've spoken to the administrator about this, this would be a component of that, to make sure that we have employee assistance, that we're checking in with our people, that when we have critical incidents, and just everyday stuff that your public safety employees are dealing with, that they have avenues, that we make sure that they're okay. But again, I think this is something that, and I agree with the administrator, we just don't want, to throw money at this problem. I don't think that's not what we're asking for. We want to have kind of a D-Day plan to put something in front of you so you can look at this. And this is where all of the benchmarks that we want to meet and all of the objectives and goals we want to hit.
Anybody have anything for this item? Deb?
This program is so near and dear to my heart because these people just keep showing up in the emergency room, and we fix them and we send them out and they come right back because we're not offering them the outreach. And so I think that's great. But I really wanted to touch upon taking care of our first responders too, because they see things and they experience things, and we need to make sure that they're okay with that too. So I was wondering if a certain situation came up, if there'd be like some role playing type things with the mental health worker, kind of as a counseling type gesture, but also maybe we could have handled it this way, or, we could think this way and make it not just about just that one officer or two officers, but the whole group, and they can all learn from that, so that they can handle things differently the next time. But also to make sure that they're getting the tap on the back that, yeah, you did it okay. Like there was nothing else you could have done, or maybe you could have changed it this way. But I'm just so happy that we're going to be able to be doing this and put those extra offices on and work with the mental health people, because it's really important. And it's just gotten worse. The pandemic has just made it worse. And I have to tell you, I work in a hospital, and the drugs and the alcohol, that's what we're treating now, and all the social issues that go with it. And it's day after day, and it's young, middle-aged, old, it's just rampant. And so we need to fix that too. And to do outreach and to provide them with the resources. So thank you for starting that whole process.
Thank you. I know, to address your point, ma'am, what I envision, and I know I've spoken to the administrator and it was part of the grant, what I want Tiverton to be is the teaching department, that the clinicians come here when they get hired. They're going, if you have a young student going for their master's in social work, they need clinical hours. They come and they ride around with us. They come and we'll address the issues specific to Tiverton, and then they're teaching us. So, you want to handle it this way. So it goes both ways. And I know I've spoken to some of you in other cities across the country. When you call 911, it's fire, rescue, police, mental health. Yeah. So that, so this way they know the resources that we need to send to you. And I want to see that here. And I think that this is kind of the, where we're starting. We're at the ground level, but it's really exciting stuff that I can see it in the future, not only Tiverton, but statewide, nationwide, that we're addressing these issues. And the police department, the fire department, we're acting as a conduit so we can get people the help that they need. And untrained police officers and firefighters are not just bringing people to the emergency room or bringing them to jail, because that's not going to solve this problem.
Right.
Well,
Donna?
yeah, the concern here is when we were talking about the grant, and luckily we have the grant, but the explosion of the amount of money it's going to cost that we're going to have to come up with. I mean, $470,000 is for, I believe, the 4th year
It's all 3
to
years.
cover everything.
It's
yeah.
all 3 years matched plus the 4th year.
Right. So eventually you'd have to come up with that and then add another $100,000 on for $50,000 a year. I'm not quite sure. I mean, we're talking 570,000, more than $1 million added onto the budget. It makes one think. I mean, where's the money going to come from? It can come from somewhere, but at some point you got to say, well, if we're going to have this, then we have to maybe not have that, because it gets to the point where the services are not affordable. And it definitely says that in the budget committee section of the charter, that it has to be affordable by the citizens. So it's a very worthy. It's just that, you know, going down the road, how do we pay for it? So I would be willing to look at some type of list of what this program would be as far as the Newport mental health, what they would provide. I think we need that.
Yeah, and Donna, that's what I heard Chris and the chief saying, that, you know, they're not looking for action on this tonight. You know, they're going to come back with a much more robust proposal for us to consider, which would include metrics and the like. At the same time, everything that we're doing with the 470 for the cops grant and then this 100,000 is not baked into the budget. A future, I know the chief will advocate for if everything goes the way he hopes it will go, but a future council can say it was a great thing, or maybe they didn't like it, but we just don't have the money to go forward. And that's what it will end up being. So I think we all hear what you're saying, and you know, we're hopeful that it's going to be positive, and maybe there will be ways down the pike that we have saved money elsewhere that we can figure out how to support it if it is positive, or it doesn't turn out as positively as what folks are hoping for, and we say, look, it was a good ride, but not what we wanted. Or it does become positive, but we say it was a good ride, we just can't find money to go forward.
I hear you. I was just wondering, when we get some type of a checkoff list or something from the mental health is what they would provide. If someone's going for help and they have insurance, would that help pay for some of it? I don't know how.
So
I'm not quite sure.
So I don't know if the direct aspects that they would be providing to the chief would be billable. Perhaps, I don't want to get over my skis on it. I don't know that it would be billable. Certainly. So the services that would be available, and chief, correct me if I'm wrong, for the department, other than the support for the staff with their own trauma and secondary trauma issues, that's more crisis oriented, so it's not necessarily billable. But if there are things that are billable, they will bill them because they are able to bill. But many of that, so, but if an officer went and intervened with a person in town, had the clinician with them, clinician did an assessment and then referred them to other services outside of that, crisis intervention, that those services are likely to be billable, but we wouldn't be part of that process. It's kind of passing them on. It's like, your primary sends you to, a neurologist or whomever, hand surgeon who I have to see on Wednesday, so he's passing me off to somebody who can, they're both billable, but they're billable at a different rate. So I don't know if does that answer your question?
Well, it's something definitely to look into. Maybe it could fund its own self, or if someone decides to go forward, that instead of trying to use, because maybe we, definitely won't have this money eventually. And I don't know, what the future is for the program, but as far as I know, for the police and the firefighters, there's supposed to be a EAP program for them, that when they're stressed, that through their union, they're supposed to be able to get help that way. Am I right on that, Chief Jones?
So we have a program here in the police department that we pay for an employee assistance program.
Right, so that they already have that, Deb. It's it might even be in the contract that it used to be in my airline contract. We had EAP, so I was just asking that because if anything came up, and there were very stressful things a flight attendant would go through. I won't go into what some of the stuff was because it's pretty scary, but you had your EAP to call and they would have assistance. So I'm pretty sure the fire and the police have that also. Anyone that's in stress-related type of industry.
I mean, so we're required to have it, and I know we've had it for a while, and the town pays for it, and we get it at it's $1,500 a year. And it's for all our employees, from dispatcher to the animal control officer to your police officers.
Okay.
It's also an accreditation standard. So, and that also not only for critical incident, but it could be someone that's having a personal problem, the loss of a loved one, a divorce, something that's going on personally for them, and it's going to affect their job performance. They can do it confidentially, and if it's also, we can refer them to it. But the critical incident is something that, a police officer, and we've had them here, fatal accidents, the death of a child, and some very shootings. We've had those. We've had officer-involved shootings. That officer, something that is not, it's beyond the norm. So those require special attention. But I'll just make this final comment to, like the Vice President was saying, and to your point, Councilor Cook, we don't know what the future is going to bring. We didn't know a pandemic was going to hit us that took the whole world and kind of repointed our resources. In 4 years, the police department could be so successful that we'll add more people in that direction and less people in enforcement. So this way that the mission of the police department could change, and where we'd save money is we're doing less of this other thing that we're doing today and more of this. So now, instead of spending more money, we're going to spend less, but take the money that we're going to spend and put it where it needs to be. So I can also envision that happen. But again, not knowing what is going to happen in the next 4 years, that the role of society and what the needs of the community could be, we could be having a different conversation. But for the time being, for now, and for what I would predict is the foreseeable future, this is a good investment for the town.
Okay, thank you.
Bill?
Thank you. As the chief will know, and he'll attest to, I reach out to him on a somewhat regular basis about concerns that I have. And one of the concerns was school shooting. And we've talked about procedures that are in place and things that he may need or they may need in order to tackle the situation. And I think that's why I supported the mental or emotional aspect of this COPS grant. I think that we need to be proactive. I think we've been very lucky in Tiverton, and I want to continue to be lucky, but I want to be proactive in identifying situations and working with the school so I don't have to hear about this on the nightly news that this happened. So as a town councilor, I am concerned, and that's why I support this mental, emotional aspect of this new chapter with the police department. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else on this? Okay, I'm gonna move on. I think, Chief, that was the last thing we had you for, so. Chris, do you want?
No, he's more than willing to take the rest of the evening off. Thank you very much. You've been a great help.
Chief?
Thanks, Chief.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
everybody. Have a great night.
So, there are 2 items that the council did approve, and I'll just give you an update on where we are with those. We're in the middle of training the men on the stick portion of the ladder truck. It's a 3-phase project. I believe we're in phase 2 of that training. The 3rd phase will be, and the final phase will be when the truck actually gets here. They'll be utilizing the truck and having hands-on. So that is coming to fruition. I believe Chief Ramos did order all the hose for that after this was approved. So those 2 items are coming to fruition.
Okay.
So the next item is library. I'll be honest with you. I did not have any discussion with the library other than I know that they would put something together, but I thought it was important that, we are trying to hit most every department here in the town, and they are a vital part of our community. They service, thousands of people every year. So allocating some money towards them and their priorities. I just took a stab. 50 grand. I don't know. It could be more. It could be less. It's I do think the Board of Trustees, along with the library director, will put together a plan and probably be back before us. But I thought it's important enough that there should be some recognition of them. And I'll work with the director to at least come up with a plan so that I do think it's important to support that building and those structures as well, and any of the initiatives that they have. I didn't want it to go that we didn't think it all highly enough to put them on a list. So the next few items are recreation items that I have had some discussions with over the years with recreation about modernizing the Fogland playground. The bathhouses down at Fogland need some work. The fencing and all our recreational facilities around town. We should really put some investment into some of their really old antiquated fences, the curled up things that kids can get hurt on. And there's a building down at the town farm area that really needs to be taken down and replaced. Again, I don't have any plans. I don't have any designs. I don't have anything to put this together. These are just items that I recollected from having conversations with, and I know that there are some more concrete issues that Stu had put before some members of the council for tonight. And again, I welcome, and I think the council welcomes any kind of input that would help move this community forward. Again, if those are priorities, we can go get pricing on them. We can do some designs. We can do some things to more formalize those. They're real needs for our kids in our community? At the moment, I don't find them as a higher priority as some of the other items I have on my list. But that doesn't mean recreation doesn't think they're very high priority. In their view, I would think that they would. And they can make a far better case for these items and the ones that they put before you as to what their needs really are. I'm not trying to spend all this money on behalf of the town as from the administrative standpoint. I'm just trying to highlight the areas I see that, we could probably make a wise investment in this community. And I do think recreation is a very vital part of our community. We get a lot of accolades about what our recreation people do for us, but we still have some pretty antiquated places like the playgrounds at the beach and the bathhouses and those kind of things that if we could spend some money on them, it would be ideal to take care of them.
So did everybody see the email that Joan sent out at 2:45 today with information from Stu?
Yes.
Yes,
Donna, did you see it? Yeah, okay.
I did.
Okay, let me finish my question.
I-
On there, it doesn't include all the things that Chris had pointed out, but it does include a couple items that I know one of them is probably pretty high priority just because our our beach keepers, the young people, the kids basically who take the money, have that shack, and it's really a shack, that little guardhouse, we call it a gatehouse, that is in deplorable condition. It's infested by rats and mold, also bees and other sorts of vermin. It's really not safe. So I think that's one thing that I'd like us to at least consider tonight, so that we have a new one before the start of the season.
Okay.
But other than that, I just wanted to raise that. Donna, you had something?
Are we allowed to add anything to the list?
Oh, yeah,
Oh.
these are just views that I
Oh.
had come up with. I'm
Okay.
expecting you guys to come. I don't want to take full credit for putting all this together. It's,
Oh,
there are things I probably haven't even thought of that all of you probably have ideas. And I'm sure there are boards and commissions and other people in town have ideas on how to spend this money that would best suit the community. Believe me, I'm not trying to take a power grab here and spend all this money. I'm just trying to outline the things that I see are important and try to put them in buckets of priorities for you to make decisions on. And I'm expecting, quite frankly, that this is not the only meeting you're going to have on this.
Oh,
I know
okay.
that I have a very thorough list here of things, but I'm assuming once this becomes public and people get an idea that the council's considering on how to spend this American Recovery monies, you're going to have other ideas coming at you.
okay. I think whether it's I think that a lot of these things are part of operations. What I'm trying to figure out is, I saw that they put up a steel building on Fish Road, and it's very nice. And you can get very nice buildings, and they can do it any way you want it to be. And honestly, I'd rather spend all of this money, comes out to $375,000, and I think you can get it for less than that. A new steel building to house the police department and give them a new building. We have the money. With this money, we just have to prioritize what we spend it on. It'd be a one-time cost. We wouldn't have to go to bond. I don't know if anyone's open to that. I think it's affordable if we use a lot of this money to put steel buildings are not that expensive to put up. They're very durable, they're good, and it can be designed the way you want it. It can be very efficient for the police department. It's just a thought. And just pay for it. Anyway.
Are you talking about using all of the American Recovery money?
No, I don't think I don't think still buildings are that I think they're affordable.
So Donna, here's my suggestion with that.
Yeah.
Is that Chris has heard you. He can take it back to the chief and just get a sense of what the requirements are for a police department. Because certainly, for example, not being in the construction area, but a police department has to have holding cells, and they have to be built to certain specifications. And what that entails, I don't know. The chief would know more than. Oh, the chief's back in. I'm going to let him kind of speak to it, but certainly we can do at least a ballpark saying, is it even is your concept from a money perspective even in the ballpark? Chief, you want to unmute? Oh, maybe he's not in. Maybe he was just there and I didn't.
Then of course you've also got to have a place to put it.
Well, yeah.
It would be in the same spot. I think that they could build it around what's presently there. They did it in Portsmouth where they left the building there and they built all around it and then took it down and then started working on the inside. I don't know. I'm not a contractor, so
not discounting it, Donna. I think Chris can go back to the chief and maybe they can look at what they did in Portsmouth and and look at the viability and what it costs them and the like.
But I'm just like, this is a terrible way for these people to work. They're all smashed in together and they're all little cubby holes. And I think, yeah, if we got the money, we should do a building and just call it a day if we can do it.
So
Take a look.
it might be feasible to have a study done on what it would take to build one. I'm not disagreeing that your thought process might be okay. I don't know the feasibility of running a police department out of a structure like that, but we could definitely, take a look and study it.
Well, can Chief Jones is not there, although he's
No,
kind of
no.
there. I don't know. But would he be? I mean, I'll look into it. I mean, I can find out. I can.
Well, I think the chief can talk to his counterpart over in Portsmouth and get a sense from him, and maybe from the town manager over there, probably Chris, at least to get a sense, what's in it, does it meet accreditation specifications,
Correct.
and what did it cost?
Yep.
Yeah. Well, they have a brick building in Portsmouth. I'm talking about.
Say that.
I'm talking about the one on Fish Road. They've also
Well, I thought you had-
advertised on
I thought you had
TV.
said Portsmouth built one.
Yeah, they have a brick building that would be millions of dollars.
Well, Westport built a wooden one. So we could check with Westport.
Well, I don't even know if we haven't. Well, I guess we'll see if we got enough money. But they say a still building is very doable, and they can do it any specifications you want, and they can do the inside any way you want. Once again, I haven't looked into it. I just watch TV sometimes and get an idea of these things, and they can be anything you want, and it might be affordable.
Okay.
Donna, where's the building on Fish Road?
It's at the old Trips Quarry down at the very end near Bookmarsh Road.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
They tore
It's near the
the,
light. It's near the light. It's like right there.
they
As you
tore the
turn
old
onto
blue
Fish
building
Road,
down and built that.
take a look at it. It's very nice.
All right, I'm gonna jump to the next page, Donna. Chris will take
Yep.
a look at some things there.
Mike,
Oh, I'm sorry, Bill, go ahead.
going back to rec, I think their first priority was the first aid kits. So I second your gatehouse request at $10,100 as a priority, but they're also the $10,225 for the 6 first aid boxes that they're requesting for the different parks. There are different things in them. Unfortunately, we may need a fire extinguisher now, unfortunately with the kids down at the parks, but the six first aid kits are also the #1 priority, I believe.
Okay. Thanks.
So the next item would be the senior
Can
center.
I just say one thing?
Go ahead, Deb.
So what Stu sent us about the Fogland, the ticket booth, it's like a prefabbed, and it's temperature controlled and whatnot. Because I thought that they had talked about last year, maybe hooking up with the schools and seeing if the schools could do that as a project. I don't know, we probably don't have time at this point because they'll be opening soon. They open Memorial Day, right? So I know that was really an issue. And I did see that they put the AEDs in, it's actually kind of like a box that has AEDs and it has like bleeding control and some other emergency materials in it. But I don't think they really want to go through another season using that ticket
So
place
here's
at
my,
Fogland. I don't think they even would use it. I think the kids were standing outside last year.
Yeah.
I don't even think they went inside.
here's my suggestion on that, is because this is the guardhouse itself. I actually didn't see the link until you mentioned it. But that's for the building. I don't know if that is a full cost in terms of they have to have they have the electricity pole there. It has to be secured, those, to the ground, those types of things. So my suggestion, Chris, if you can talk with Stu, we can put that perhaps on our next meeting agenda,
Okay.
that and the AEDs, and just, check on the priorities and the like, and make sure we have a firm cost. And we could look at, and maybe he has already talked with the schools to see a possibility, and certainly look at that, and then come back with a firmer number for us.
Sure. Okay.
Does that
I'll
sound
definitely
reasonable,
speak to him
folks?
tomorrow. I'll speak to him tomorrow.
Okay.
Because this thing that he emailed us, there's a link you can get a quote online, and you can customize them however that you want, 100 amp service and electrical panel, HVAC unit, phone jack, all these different things, you can put them in there. So I'm wondering if Stu already did that, if he feels that 10,000 or whatever that amount would be to put all that he needed and to hook it up and everything.
Yeah, and he may have, I just don't have enough information here.
Right,
Okay.
right.
So I also know, like on the items I was talking about, like the bathhouses, and I'll talk to Rick Rogers about this, because I don't even know if we know where the septic system is down there and what shape and all those kind of, we would have to look at things to come up with a more formal plan on. But for those particular items, I will definitely make sure that Stu is ready enough to come to the council and have some more firm plans for the AEDs and the gatehouse. But moving, that's why the other recreation items that I had were not priority, because we still need to formulate plans to do things. If we're gonna do a playground, or if we're gonna do the bathhouses, we would definitely have to put together a plan as such, go out and try to get some quotes, and then come back and see what the council's view was on it. And
And
obviously,
maybe see if there's grants too, because we
Right.
got a grant for the town farm playground.
Yep. So the next item is the senior center. In order to finish the siding, she's done a very good job of dealing with the windows, the roofs, and she did one side of I think the front side of the building. The other three sides still need to be completed. And she's very hopeful that the council would consider at least finishing that project. I think she had a quote of somewhere around 18,000, but I think that quote is 2 years old now. So I'm estimating we'd have to go out and get it requoted to finish that. But it should be somewhere around this figure. But again, it's a project. I think it's pretty high to finish that building. It would make sense to do that. But we will definitely get some quotes and come back to you with a more firm plan.
Can I ask a
Go
question?
ahead, Donna. Go ahead.
Chris, I thought they already did the siding on the outside. They didn't finish it?
They only did one side. She had enough money to, I think they did
One
the,
side?
well, I think they had money to do the roof. And then they did one side, and there was some residual monies that really got swallowed up in FY20 because we wouldn't let her finish any more work because we didn't have any money. We
Oh,
stopped all our projects. And that's part of what this is a lot of what we're looking at is we stopped a lot of capital projects back in FY20. Those monies never, ever materialized again. And while we started looking at FY21 and we got that gaming money back, it was kind of set aside to look at capital projects as we move forward. But for the last few years, we have stripped most every capital project out of the annual budget. So when she had money left over at the end of FY20, and it wasn't just her budget, we had salary monies in the police, salary monies in the fire. We found monies everywhere we could to balance the budget because we lost almost $2.5 million in the last 4 months of FY 2020. We wound up ending FY 2020 with a very, very minor, with a surplus, but it was because of all the monies that had not been spent. And we managed our way through to the very end of the year of trying to make sure that we ended that year on a positive note. So what I'm looking at is trying to at least restore that project back to where it was and put some funding back to finish that project.
the only thing is everyone knows that when you don't get everything at once for siding, you're not always can get the same color. It might be a different batch.
Yeah.
So
Well,
that, I don't know.
so I do think that we can still get that batch or at least that color. But, we'll work with the vendor who did it and get the particulars and try to get a requote on finishing that building.
And of course, the other side of that is you only see one side of the building at the time. So
Well, that's-
unless they're radically different.
Tell
color,
them
then-
not to look at everything at once.
Yeah, it's like when you lose, it's like when you lose a hubcap, Come on, you put two different ones on the same side of the car,
All right, the town hall event and records.
So this town hall, it's, when well, actually, we really haven't had that many meetings inside for the last couple of years, but from what I'm told is the chambers can be very daunting during the summertime. So heating and ventilation in this building would go a long way to somewhat modernizing it. Again, it's a low priority issue. It's whether or not we have money. It's, ideally, it would be nice, but it's also not at the very, very high end of the priority list. Townwide records management system, while I do think it's very, very important, it's going to take some work to put this together because we would need to digitize quite a bit of our records. And we would have to put a very formalized plan together to get it so that all of our records moving forward were digitized. And that's ideally what I'm trying to do is manage our records, all of our record keeping into a searchable, digitized system so that we're not worried years from now that, we're still looking through boxes or we have things in record storage somewhere that is just so antiquated or wet and moldy, and that we need to get our records to a more modern state. And that's kind of what that thought is. But again, I don't have any plans of doing that at the moment. Whether or not we could hire somebody like Iron Mountain or some other records management company to help come in and scan all of our records, digitize them, and get them into a format that would be usable and workable and searchable. We'd have to do some exploring to get to what that would actually be. And ideally, when it's all done, again, and I know that all of you are thinking it, there's going to be a cost to this running annually. But it is, I think, the cost of running this town. It's something we should be entertaining and something we should be doing to set a legacy for anybody who's going to be coming in here later, that all of our records are available and searchable. Something we don't have today.
Questions on those two items? All right.
No, other than to make the comment, Deb and I have been in the basement where the records are stored. That is a disaster. We're one flood away from disaster down there.
Yep.
Literally. And if that happens, you have no clue how bad it could be. There's no backup. If it's gone, it's gone, and we could be in serious trouble.
Some of those records were handwritten. A lot of them were.
I'm
Oh, they
sure.
were, and they were in boxes, and they were just in harm's way.
They at least need to be put in a climate controlled storage area.
Right.
That is, fire protected and all the rest of it, but it'd be ideal to get them out of the basement because that is not a very good place to put them.
No, it's
But-
very dangerous.
It is what it is. It's, we're living with all these legacies that I've inherited when I came in here, and ideally we're trying to get them to at least be a little bit more modern.
Right.
So
DPW
that's going to take a project to put together a plan of action to move forward.
Okay.
So the next items are actually, and I'll go back to FY 2020. Again, we took a lot of these items off the docket that we didn't do. DPWs, and obviously we haven't really done any major road paving for the last 2 years and probably into next year. So and it doesn't have to be all done at once. If we did it, let's say, I don't know, $400,000 a year or $350,000. I don't know what the number is that we do, but I would think that because we haven't done anything over the last couple of years, by and far, that would be the largest dollar item, is to get some of our roads up to speed. And as Rick would tell you, and I'm sure he will, that, with all the roads that we have, even this is not going to make a big dent in it. But it would be, a good gesture for the community that we are at least trying to take care of some of our roads. And we have some pretty bad roads that need to be fixed, that are not state roads. Our snowplow trucks, we are probably still in need of 3 more of them. We have some pretty antiquated equipment. Rick definitely needs a trailer to move a bulldozer around or the backhoes around. he could really use a forklift in that building. And I do think, now this was not an item in FY 2020, but I know he's had a number of issues with the fuel management system over there continually breaking down. So we would probably look at modernizing the fuel management system as well. I think that those are all viable projects for the Public Works Department that we have seen time and time again. It would give some money back to that department to get some of these initiatives back on track to where they should be. And I know Rick's around. I don't know if he's in the audience, so.
Yeah, he's got his mic off on. Go ahead,
Yes.
Rick, and then Deb.
Yes, thank you. This is Rick, and I'm happy to comment. Probably people have seen what we've done for paving, for instance, a couple of years ago, we did an area, by Primrose, by Briarwood, that's behind the CVS, area. So if people have been over there. We did a little bit of work on Albert and Laurel Lane, which are on Gas Hill. So when you see these little bits of areas and you see that they cost about, those two combined cost about 450,000, 400 grand. So you get a scope of what it costs to do the reclamation and the paving. So, and I don't have those numbers exactly, but you get an idea of the scale. You don't get a lot, and the prices of course have gone up. So we were spending about 500 to 600,000 a year before the pandemic hit. And you can see the roads that we did. Again, we did a few roads off of Nanaquacket. We did the Albert and Laurel. We did next to Secana Bay Manor. We did behind CVS. We did between South Lake Road and East Road. And we have done a few other roads here and there. And when you look at those few roads that we did, and you realize we probably spent on those all total, maybe $700,000 or $800,000, and you look at the rest of the town, you realize that the town is getting further and further behind. And again, as mentioned, in fact, Donna mentioned it also. Right now, with the budget being about $500,000 or $600,000 a year, we're doing a road and we wouldn't get to it again till maybe 70 years later. And roads simply don't last that long. So $1.2 million is very much appreciated, but it's a step. But if you really wanted to catch up on roads, you'd probably have to, I'm not saying the town's gonna do it, but you'd probably have to do like $1 million a year. And the town historically has decided that they'd rather have some rough roads and put that kind of money into the paving. And that's for the town to decide. I respect that.
Thank you, Rick. Deb, did you have a question or a comment?
I was just looking to see if we still had anything in the budget, but we did take it out for
Right.
that because we were thinking about this. But what is that, the fuel system upgrade? Is that where they put the gas in the
So
trucks?
the diesel systems and the gasoline systems that we use to put fuel in our own vehicles.
Okay,
So we do have some double wall tanks that are solid. I don't have an issue with the tanks. It's the management system that's continually breaking down. It's not working properly. Sometimes we don't get a great accounting system out of it as to who's taking fuel. And it's important to know where our fuels are going. It just is. So I know we monitor them fairly well that nobody is taking from them, but it would be, we should have a very decent system that gives us an accountability of what we're doing.
is that just diesel fuel?
No, I think we have gasoline as well.
Because that's where the police go, right? To gas up at the DPW?
Rick?
Yeah, yes. Thank you for the questions. And yes, it's, as Chris said, it's unleaded gasoline and diesel fuel. DPW fuels up there, the ambulances, the fire trucks, the police cars, the fire marshal, building inspector, senior center van, the schools, all those vehicles, not the buses, all those vehicles fuel up here at the 2 tanks at DPW. And as Chris mentioned, there are, to me, to my liking, more failures than would be nice on the system as far as operating and accounting. We do the best we can, but something as simple as gauges, there's no working gauges on those tanks. So it's not impossible, certainly, but we go out and dipstick the tanks, but that's only so accurate when every inch is maybe 70 gallons. So you can't get that close to an accounting. And if you're off, 35 gallons at $4, and that's peanuts, that's a quarter of an inch. You're off maybe $150. And so an accounting system that's more accurate would certainly be beneficial to the town, and something that doesn't break down as often, because if the pumps don't work, then we have to go somewhere else to get fuel.
Anybody have any other questions on the DPW items?
Just one, Rick, the forklift, is this for a newer forklift or to fix the one you've got?
Well,
Because if I remember right, the one you've got is liability waiting to happen.
yes, I'm not sure when that forklift was built. It was a hand-me-down, I believe, from maybe the feds or from the military, I can't remember. But that, I don't know exactly how old that is, but I would guess,
His brother was Edsel.
yeah. It might be 40 or more years old. So
Yeah.
it would be a new one, Jay, that per your question, not a new one necessarily, new to
Newer.
us. New to
Newer.
us, but not to fix the one that we have, but to get a used forklift.
I've always been, since I first saw that thing and realized what was wrong with it and how you were using it, I've always been a little chilled.
Can I question
Bill?
Rick? When was the last time you priced that? Because my cousin owns a forklift company down in Florida, and he said you ain't touching anything for $7,500. So I was just wondering when you priced that.
Yeah, thank you, Bill. That's been on the wish list for maybe
Oh.
3 years or so. So that was priced a long time ago.
Yeah, he said you're not touching. He said, and if it's 40 years old, you may not even be able to rehab that for $7,500. I know your old one doesn't have brakes anymore, but he says you're not touching anything for $7,500. To tell you the truth, it's a low price already, so I don't want to really talk too much about it. But I don't know that figure is accurate. Thank you.
Yeah,
So,
Thank you for that information.
and that actually brings to a point that I was thinking. So given how, and I don't know how this is affecting the commercial market, so to speak, but given how the price of even used vehicles has skyrocketed lately, I'm wondering if it makes sense, 2 things. One is to at least do a revised check of what it might cost for the snowplow trucks, the
Right.
trailer, the forklift right now, and even this fuel system upgrade, to get a better sense. And then we can also look at hoping that things will come down in price. Are there things that we can hold off on a little bit longer to wait for that spike that we're in to drop some?
Correct. All
Does
right.
that make sense to you two?
It does.
Is everybody else okay with that?
Thank you.
Yeah, because like Rick said, well, Rick said forklift, my recollection forklift alone has been like 5 years. So, yeah.
Okay. So what I'd like to do is I'm going to walk us back through, and Christopher,
So there's one more item.
oh, this, okay, yeah, that's right.
And I'm gonna be clear, I know there are some council members who would like the idea of maybe using the American Recovery monies to fill the shortage on the landfill closure delta that we don't have funding for. I am currently in the process of working with the infrastructure bank to, ascertain what kind of programs could be available. And quite frankly, my view is that there is a dedicated funding stream going towards the landfill closure. And that should continue until that's paid off. So I'm not necessarily, it's not my view that we should be using the American Recovery monies to be doing that. So I did, after this spreadsheet was completed, I put it in as a placeholder just to have it on the table for discussion, because like I said, at the end of the day, these are not my decisions to make. All I'm trying to do is provide information to the council, and we'll get whatever information you need to make an intelligent decision moving forward. So a lot of these things, like I said, we will get quotes on and pricing and more information. I'm not looking to, get approvals for any particular items tonight, other than somewhat agreement on maybe some priorities. So do we use, the American Recovery monies to fund this? And that's an option. It's available. So when you look at these totals, by the way, you can almost figure that I plugged in that landfill closure after the fact, because I had come up with requests of about 4.1 million, and then with the council's already approved. And then if you look at the high priority medium, you can tell when you look down, it says where it says funding available, see below. And then the next, like third column over, there's a number 2.215 million. That's actually the 45,000 already approved and the 2.170 in the high priority. It doesn't include the landfill closure. So I wanted to be clear that it's not a mistake. I added that in at the very last minute, and it didn't dawn on me that it didn't tabulate as far as the totals went. So, but it is definitely an item that needs to be discussed. It's something, it's an option that's available. It's a known commodity that we know that we have a shortage, and we have other options available, but I wanted to put it on the table for those council members who think that we should be using this money to pay this. So.
Excuse.
Chris, have you looked into clean water grants?
So right now, the funding that's available for all that clean water is through the state's infrastructure bank.
Okay.
DEM is in partnership with them. So we had to get a priority listing of our projects in town. The landfill is in the middle of being on that, inserted into that priority list. Again, I don't want to beat a dead animal here, but we thought when we went through this entire thing with DEM about closing this landfill, that it was automatically put on the priority list. It wasn't. So we're jumping through hoops now to get it on that priority list. And it would then be available for clean water funding that's available, federal monies that the infrastructure bank is managing. And it does have some forgiveness of debt, some other components to it that would be beneficial to us. So I'd like to
help us put it together. It could help us put a dent in this.
Hang on, Donna. Jay, what was that?
It could help us put a dent in this shortfall then.
It could.
Maybe.
Donna?
I'm really sorry. I don't seem to have a hand to put up
That's
to
okay.
even,
That's
I don't
okay.
know where it went, but I think the $1 million should go towards paving and or for what I had asked about a steel building, to have a new building for the police department. Because the land closure, Chris is supposed to look into what he was talking about, and also we can keep up the bag program to pay that off. So anyway.
All right. Thank you, Don.
Yep.
I just let Renee in from the Economic Development Commission because I know she has at least some conceptual ideas to throw out there. I don't think we have any firm numbers, but conceptual ideas that could help with economic development, which obviously helps our tax base. Renee?
Hi, I'm sorry. I don't know if you can hear me because I'm hearing Donna continuing to talk.
Oh, no, I can hear you. Donna's quiet, so you're getting an echo somehow.
I'm getting an echo somehow.
We can hear you.
Yep. We hear you
Okay,
fine.
I'm going to go ahead and, but the first thing I wanted to just say that this has been very enlightening for me to just sit through this meeting because I have been very impressed with the things that people have thought about and the thoughtfulness that has gone into their actions.
Renee?
Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and talk and ignore what I'm hearing. But I also just want to just say, I just want to say that I reinforce the idea that the police department brought up because I worked in mental health for a long time and feel that having someone who is a social worker or someone who can perform that duty with the police would be a significant help in what they have to do. I worked in South Providence for a long time, and that was clearly something that could be used. But what I wanted to talk about today was that when we started looking at goals for the, oh, it's very distracting.
So can everybody
Yeah.
put them, wait a second, Renee, can everybody put themselves on mute?
Let's
and
see.
if that helps, Renee, please.
Yeah, I'm still hearing an echo for some reason or another.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I will
Thank you,
turn that
Steve.
off.
That's what I was thinking, something like that.
Okay,
There, is that better, Renee?
okay. Is that better?
Well, we
Is
could
it
hear
better for
you.
you?
Is it better for you?
I'm so sorry.
That's
This
okay.
just drives me crazy. But when we started looking at things for the environment, the EDC, I went back to looking at the comprehensive plan, and in the comprehensive plan, they talk about, yeah, it is. Thank you. God, something is just not right. I keep hearing myself.
Okay, we can hear you though.
Okay. Gregory?
I hear like a heartbeat.
So if you have.
Can you hear me?
If you have two computers running at the same time, they will bleed over onto one another, which is a
That's what I'm
possibility.
trying to,
So if you
I'm
can
trying
turn
to
the
get this,
speaker off on one of them, it won't do it.
okay.
So speakers
I'm
are, I think, F3. At least on mine.
Thank you.
So can you speak so we can hear you? Renee, you still there?
She's muted.
Yeah, I'm. Yep. Are you
I am.
still there? All right, is it still doing it to you?
She's muted again.
Yeah, that was my fault. I was trying to tell her to unmute and I hit the mute button as she was opening up. Renee, I need you to unmute again.
Okay,
There you go.
am I all set? Okay.
Yeah.
What I did was go back to the comprehensive plan and look at some of the items that were listed there in terms of what they expected the Economic Development Commission to do. And one of the things that came up was the issue of North Tiverton and how best to work with the businesses in North Tiverton, and that was an area that was considered an area that people wanted to work on in the comprehensive plan. So what I did was when I went back there, I reached out to resources, including the Newport Chamber of Commerce and Connect Greater Newport, to see if we could benefit from the expertise of the people that had experience in the areas. So basically, we have two interrelated proposals. The first proposal was to actually go back and look at developing a Main Street plan for North Tiverton. Now, I know something like this was done about 10 years ago, but we're talking about records, and we have not been able to locate that particular report. But also it was done before the comprehensive plan. And I think at this point, we need to be looking at something that's updated and in keeping with the comprehensive plan. So what I'd like to do is at some point, or one of the proposals is to look at a review or a plan where we could hire some experts to come in and look at what build out would look like in North Tiverton. What are the things that we need to do for the businesses? What are the areas that are there for commercial use? What are the kinds of commercial uses that would best fit with that particular area? And also looking at things like including some pocket green spaces, because North Tiverton is an area that doesn't have a lot of green space. And as we're developing plans for North Tiverton, we should be looking at what impacts on the residents as well. So that was one of the things that I wanted to talk about having doing for the EDC, getting a plan for North Tiverton that would look at all those factors and help us break out steps in terms of what we could do next to develop that area. I think Tiverton has a lot of potential, and that area has a lot of potential. As you drive down back and forth Main Road, there are a lot of storefronts there that are undeveloped, that are underutilized. And I think that those are appropriate places to be developing small businesses, which is small local businesses, which is what the people of Tiverton were looking for when they talked about an added input to the comprehensive plan. So the second part of that, and one of the things that is always a stumbling block, is that it would be interesting, and this is just a proposal, to look at if there was some way that the town itself could develop a revolving grant or business loan fund. Because what happens many times is if businesses go to get a grant, they don't have the, they have to have matching funds to be able to do something. So one of the things that we looked at was that in 2016, the town of Newport actually did something about that. And they talked about, the program was called an analysis of storefront and building facade improvement programs. And one of the ways that they worked, one of the proposals or one of the ways they thought of funding this was to have either the municipality develop a revolving grant fund that could be like the seed money for a business to go ahead and start working on their storefront. And that was one of the things that we were looking at. So basically, those are two proposals that I know when there are so many priorities in this town, and I realize that, and listening to this, it made me feel even more like that. But when we're looking at the Economic Development Commission, we did want to start focusing on establishing and helping small businesses in town to renovate, restore, and work on their buildings so that they can, especially in North Tiverton, so that we can have another area to go to besides always talking about Four Corners. I think there are a lot of businesses and the potential is there for growth. And that's basically what I wanted to present to the town council.
Thank you,
And I'm
Renee.
sorry it took so long.
That's okay, thank you. Anybody have questions for Renee? So Renee, do you think at a soon future meeting, you could come back with an idea of what such an assessment would cost?
Yeah, I think it would be helpful. Yeah, because we were right in between two meetings. So
Right.
I know for a fact that when we proposed the grant that went to the Rhode Island Commerce, that they were talking about fees, a cost of about $20,000 for a proposal to do some of the work for that. So we're talking about a ballpark figure would be somewhere in there, but I'd have to research that further to get a better idea.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions?
Any other questions for Renee? Okay, hearing none. Here's what I'd like to do. I'd like to go back through and just get a sense from Chris of any items that he thinks he really needs us to take action on either tonight or in the very near future. And also from us on things. And I know there's a couple things that, and also just want to get a sense that we're all in agreement on what's what are some of the studies, so to speak, that we talked about. So Chris, going back to the OPEB, do you see a need for us to take action on the 21 or 22 appropriations right now? You're on mute.
So I do agree that the FY 21 and 22 OPEB contributions should be made in the near future to replenish those accounts back to where they should be. At least demonstrating that we've made our contributions, at least for those two particular years. And when we get to FY 23, we can look at that. But, you know, I think from what I've heard from the council that they're pretty much in agreement with doing that. So it doesn't have to be tonight. It could be at the meetings that I come back and offer some more suggestions as it relates to the high priority items like the, getting a quote for the broadband, working with Cybercom to come up with a conceptual and financial plan for the radio, fire radios. Working with, those are my two highest priorities. And then obviously all those IT related issues in between, I would like to go get some quotes on and come back with more formal processes for that. But that's probably all I'd be looking for tonight. And I would do the senior center as getting a quote on that as well too, to come back to you.
Okay, so let me see if I can recap. You tell me if I'm off. That for the OPEB, we can wait a meeting or two?
Correct.
Okay, so Joan, if we can think about, when we look at our meeting schedules, trying not to pack, I don't think that's going to take long, but maybe either the next meeting or the first meeting in April. The sewer, you're going to look for more information? Is that?
I will get formal quotes on trying to get those particular items more firm. And because we just, between our collective thoughts, between the director at the wastewater, Rick and myself, we thought that these were pretty good estimates, but we really need to probably go out and seek more formal quotes on this.
Okay. Same with the broadband or?
Broadband, I'm working with Ocean right now. And actually, I think they're coming in to meet Chief and I believe either the Thursday or Friday of this week. And they should have more firm numbers for us. They've been working with us for the last 2 months. We've been trying to put this project together. And they had a lot of work to do to try to figure out where they were going to connect from. So I do think that they will be in a better position to give us some information.
Okay, and while we're, I don't know where it fits in, but just to make sure I don't lose my thought, you and the chief are going to look further at Donna's suggestion around the steel building.
Yep.
Okay.
I'll talk to the chief about it.
Okay.
And then
the IT, you're going to get us update?
We'll get quotes on all of those things that we need. I'll work with our current IT vendor to make sure that we can bring these systems at least up to being far better, more modern and protected. And I'll work with Andrew Rice and his group, and we'll formalize some plan of doing the town chambers, at least for the hybrid stuff. And I'll look at modernizing the desktop so that it would be, you could connect in it would have screens there with terminals, but you'd be able to plug in a laptop to operate and show things on screens and things like that.
Okay. Then the
And
radio
the microphones as well.
Okay. And the radio comms, you're going to look at a phase-in plan with the chief and
Correct. Yep.
Okay.
We would definitely try to do that over a 2-cycle period anyhow, like the end of one fiscal year to the beginning of another. It may still be that same chunk of money, but it will be split into 2 fiscal years.
Okay. And we're going to get more information. So the COPS grant, do we need to show a match rate now?
No, I'll actually work with the chief and we'll put it on paper so you can see what those matches look like for year 1, 2, and 3, and what year 4 looks like.
Okay.
So that, I don't want to just put a number out there that people haven't vetted.
Right. And then you're going to come up with the plan for the.
I'll work with the chief and at least Newport County Mental Health to start with. And if we need to bring others in to come up with a more conceptualized plan with metrics and details as to what it is we expect this program to do.
Okay, we already took care of the ladders stuff. Library, you're gonna talk with.
I'll call her and I'll have her put together some conceptual plans for the council to entertain.
Okay, and so we're gonna have Stu come in next week around the gatehouse,
Okay,
the AEDs, and then.
I'll work with him about formalizing some of these other conceptual issues that we've talked
Yeah.
about over the last 2 years.
Okay,
I'll definitely get a quote for the senior center to finish that up. And I'll talk to Rick about trying to figure out, going out to try to get better estimates on what these vehicles are gonna cost, whether it's the trailer, the forklift, the snowplow trucks, and the fuel grades, upgrading that system. As far as
Okay.
paving goes,
before you get to that, Chris, hang on.
Yep.
Back to the ventilation and records, you're gonna get a plan with that?
It's a lower priority for me at the moment.
Okay.
And I didn't want to purposely, I put a lot of things in here.
Yeah.
But I do think there are other, and I do know that I'll remind Jay that open space had a request for some issues for Fort Barton of modernizing some things up there. So there may be other entities that, while I would love to do these projects, I don't want to take all the money. I'm not trying to be greedy.
Yeah, right,
I
right.
try to put enough things on so that we could whittle it down, give me some things to work on, and then still have some money available. You have other people who are going to come before you, and you guys have your own ideas that you might want to do.
Yeah, okay, well, that's good.
Can,
Well, I want
can
to
I
be
ask?
clear.
So Donna, what's that?
I always feel like I'm butting in because I can't really.
No, that's okay.
Does everybody else have a hand to use? Because I don't have anything to click.
We do, I don't know why you don't see it, but
It's
No,
under
no.
reactions at the bottom of the screen, Donna. If you hit that little thing that says reactions,
Okay.
I think a hand is there to.
Yeah.
Oh, there it is. All right.
that's okay. Well, you've
All
been
right.
fine, you've been
All right.
Under
fine.
hand.
All right. So, the open space, they have $600,000 in that account. Can't they use some of that money to take care of their open spaces?
You want me to tell Donna what they want?
Sure.
Part of it is a Fort Barton plan on how best to manage Fort Barton and make it more accessible and user-friendly, I guess you would say.
Right.
Some of it's, there are trees now that are dead that are liable to fall down. the
Oh, I
bank
was
and
at that meeting.
that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah.
They paid for a plan. And yeah, you can't even see for the trees now. I mean, after all, it was to look for ships coming in. You can't even see anything. Yeah, so I mean, open space though, to my point, has over $500,000. So I was just wondering if they can use that money to make some of their improvements on the land that they bought or are in charge of. Or am I wrong about that?
Well, I think, Donna, with every proposal that comes forward, just like Chris is looking at the infrastructure bank for the landfill. And Deb had suggested some other possible grants for something, I don't remember what. We're always going to want to look at, okay, we have this money sitting in front of us, but are there other things that we can get, other monies we can get to stretch these funds out further? So I think that's what you're just suggesting is, if we can use any of that money and it makes sense, then I think we should look at it. If we can't for whatever reason, or we decide it doesn't make sense, then we don't. And then we still have to decide whether or not to move forward with their idea. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, I really want to know if they should be using that money. It comes from the conveyance tax to take care of the land that they buy up, and they need to take care of it too. And it shouldn't then come back as a taxation, because it's already been taxed and put into that account.
Yeah, well, and I don't hear anybody saying we want to add more taxes to pay for that proposal.
Oh,
So,
okay, thank you.
So I will have a talk with Gary Plunkett to find out. They've got like 5 different fund accounts. and I'll ask them, what can they use? Are there any restrictions on what they can use various funds for?
So, Deb,
And don't they, so Donna, what I do is I just raise my hand and it makes the little hands. It's something new on my
oh,
new
wow.
tab. Yeah, I just
I
do
can,
that.
I can
and
do
it
it.
does-
See, I was told how to do it. It looked like a button with a smiley face. I wasn't sure what that was.
So,
All
yeah,
right,
my-
thank you.
it's
I'm gonna
my-
lower my hand. Okay, thanks.
Jay, they're also looking to do, I don't know if it's open space, it may be conservation. They're looking to do something at Fogland. It has something to do with erosion.
Oh, that's a whole different thing.
yeah,
That's
and
a
they
whole
have some.
Yeah,
they have
we
some
already
grants
voted
coming
on
in.
that.
Yeah, they have some
We
grants.
did,
coming in.
right?
We voted yes on that because they're gonna use all kinds of grants and it almost ends up being like nothing that we're paying
Right,
for.
So I know I agree with Rick that and Chris, that there's a high need for paving. So Don, I'm wondering if I don't think I could go with $1 million, but I wonder if you want to make a motion to go with, say, 5.25 for right now? 525,000?
Yeah, all right. Are we doing something? Am I supposed to
Well, we
make?
can, and that's a high priority, and I'm sure that Rick would like to, there's some scheduling that would need to take place to really get
We
the ball
definitely can do
rolling.
some schedule.
Right.
But the way it's Chris has it out is 500,000, then this 500,000, then this 200,000, comes out to 1,200,000. I wanted to put that whole million for the land. We're not putting enough towards paving, period. Just
Right.
period.
Yeah, so I'm asking, and I don't know what the rest of the council, I know Bill had his hand up, but if you want to put, I'm happy to consider a motion for, a lesser amount than 1.2 million, maybe 5.25 to start with.
Would you like any comments from DPW?
Hang on, Rick, hang on, please, hang on.
I just think we're penny pinching on the paving and we can't catch up. Everyone's complaining and it's part of our infrastructure and we're just letting it go. It's gonna get a real meltdown after a while. So you want me to do, you're breaking up the 1.2 million to be 500,000?
Maybe
Well,
so.
no, so.
To be
so
done now?
Chris had it set up for 5, 5, and 2. My suggestion is if you want to do just a little bit more than 5, 5.25, we can entertain such a motion.
Or we could do 600 each year and skip the third year.
I don't know. What do you think, Rick? Is that helpful? I mean, you need $1 million a year.
Right. Yes, thank you, Mike and Donna and Chris. Right now, we're operating on 2019 bids. So that was fiscal year ending 2020, I believe. And those prices about $70 a ton for binder and $74 a ton for surface course. I would expect starting July 1st, the bids because we have to go out to bid again. I would expect those bids to be at least 10% higher. But that's
because
just
of the
an
oil.
estimate.
It's an
Right.
oil product. Okay. Oh,
And maybe
boy.
more so. So I'm not saying that we have to spend money this fiscal year. That's totally up to the council. But I would expect the prices to go up starting July 1st.
So Mike, if we did 600,000 this year and 600,000 next year, we could do it all over June and July and get $1.2 million done in like one small food, one chunk.
We could, that would mean
Oh.
that would mean folks have to understand that that's 1.2 out of this.
4.6.
pot.
Correct.
Yeah,
Bill, you
well,
had your hand up before.
Well, you also have allocation, this is spread out over 2 years.
Right.
it's almost like having 25 credit cards and you keep paying $5 on, this big amount and you get nowhere. And that's what's happening here. You're getting nowhere. You got to pick something, go after it. whether it's roads or, I mean, there's so many things. I mean, your infrastructure for IT, that has to be taken care of. And it's the same thing with your paving. And I mean, some of the other things are, I mean,
So,
they're
Donna,
priority,
we're not-
but
we're-
I
we're
don't
not
know.
even-
You
we're not
know,
even-
I'm gonna make a motion that it's $600, $600, $600,000, and then another $600,000 for this year, and then after July 1st, the other $600,000 to be spent towards paving.
Okay, and we'll go out to bid and get firm prices on it, just so that we have it.
Bill, do I have a second on that?
I'll second.
Okay, Bill, you had discussion?
No, I'm good.
Okay. Any further discussion on that? Hearing, so
So
the
just
go ahead.
Confirm, we're doing, so I'm raising my hand, it's coming up. Just to confirm, so we're doing one at the end, 600,000 at the end of this fiscal year. And then we're doing another 600,000 next fiscal year.
Right.
Right.
And so that'd be the 1.2 million.
Right.
So we'll get bids and we'll try to work with the vendor to structure it over that June, July period so that we get 600,000 each year. So we can get $1.2 million done at one time. So it'll make an impact on the community.
Okay.
That's good because the community's noticing.
It does, believe me. That's
Yeah.
one of
I think
our
the
highest
chief-
complaints is paving, but and potholes, but it's
I think the
it's right up
chief
there.
probably is not seeing as many speeding tickets because the potholes have slowed everybody down.
I love potholes.
All right, so I have a motion to allocate $600,000 for this fiscal year and an additional $600,000 for next fiscal year for paving from the ARPA funds. I have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Hearing none. Jay,
Yes.
Bill,
Yes.
Deb,
Yes,
Donna,
Yes.
Mike, a yes. Okay,
Thank
so
you.
I think that's all the business we have tonight. Anybody, other than Chris, you know, I think you said you'd do this, you'd reach out to the other
I will.
boards and commissions and get other ideas. I mean, obviously, we have a finite amount of dollars to play with,
Right.
to use, but we also in the future will have additional casino. I want to reframe that. We'll have additional money from gamblers
Correct.
to use to support our town to avoid raising taxes because we're using the money from gamblers.
So on that note, Mike, I will say that I know each of the departments have capital requests that did not make the budget. They also did not make this list. So they will be hopefully entertained as we go through that process once we get that funding source resolved as far as how we're going to utilize it. But there are a number of other capital needs that we haven't even discussed yet this year.
Okay. Anybody have anything else on the agenda items of this evening? So,
can I just ask
Yep.
one thing?
Yep.
So these ARPA funds that we're getting and they've changed everything so that we can use them, it's a little more open as to how we can use it. Do we know what they've done with the schools, Chris? Because they also get ARPA funds, correct?
They do. They have different restrictions than we do. They have to provide things for, obviously, to deal with the COVID mitigation issues. They have some lost learning issues that they have to deal with as well. They have to justify that, you know, how they're bringing kids back that because they were taught at home or on Zoom, you know, there was a loss of learning for that they're trying to re-engage kids and get them back up to where they should be. I don't know. I don't profess to know all the restrictions that they have, but I do know that they got us, you know, a significant chunk of money and they have their own restrictions that they're dealing with. They get their funding through RIDE and they get their own pocket of money to deal with these kind of issues. So obviously we took the lion's share of the brunt of all revenue loss on the town side because we had to fund education as if there was no loss of revenue. And I'm not, I'm not trying to take credit for things, but, we're trying to reinstitute some of the things that we pushed off and kicked down the road. OPEB being one, paving being others, vehicles like snowplow trucks and things like that. And obviously all of our IT stuff that we have not been putting any money into. So they have their own sets of monies and they're dealing with their educational programs as they should without interference from us. So I think it's a happy balance that way that, they're at least able to manage their educational programs, utilizing their recovery funds without interference from us. And, obviously we're trying to do the best that we could with whatever that other source of revenue is that we have and trying to we gave them, some significant monies to move forward on trying to get some of those repairs done as well. And as we move forward, I'm sure we'll continue doing the same. It's, those structures are our structures. So, I think,
Exactly. No, we're all in this together, so.
Yep.
Yeah.
I think it's just trying to play fair in the sandbox with everybody. And everything that we're doing here helps mitigate our liability and exposure for everything that we're doing. So it's, it's a good move on behalf of the community to try to mitigate some of our financial exposures where we're weakened. So
All right.
I appreciate everything you guys did tonight. So.
Yeah, thank you, Chief. Thank you, Rick. Thank you, Renee. Thank you, everybody who joined us. One last thing, we are in person next week because we had a couple of public hearings that were advertised for in person. And then we can decide after that. We have,
Okay.
Mike, I believe it's extended to April 13th, correct, for the possibility of virtual meetings? I think it's April 13th. They'll correct me. We'll talk about it next week.
Okay.
If not,
I'm here. I'm here. I just couldn't find my unmute button. I'm sorry. I don't know if the governor extended again. March 31st was the last date that I saw.
March 31st. Okay.
Yeah.
So a source of mine said they saw on Providence Business News it was April 13th. So
It
if
could
you
be.
wanna check that out. We can
I'll
talk
check that
about
out.
it next
Yep,
week.
yep.
All right. All right. I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion
Bill?
to adjourn. Yep.
Call it Joe.
Bill, then Jay. So taking a vote, Jay,
Yes.
Bill,
Yes.
Deb,
Yes.
Donna,
Yes.
and again, thank you, and myself a yes.